Assalamu alaikum students. Now let's talk about instruments. When we are talking about sound, not talking about instruments will keep the discussion incomplete. So whenever we talk about sound, let's first talk about pleasant sounds, the sound which make us feel good. And these type of sounds come from the various instruments. And some of the instruments are here which you see on your screen. Veena, tabla, harmonium, manjira, gantam, dolak, iktara, jaltaram, guitar. And each of them produce a very unique sound. As I mentioned, whenever sound is produced, there has to be some vibrations. Now, the most interesting part comes. When I talk about guitar, iktara, or veena, we actually see the strings, right? In these instruments we actually see the strings. You can visualize it easily, very easily, that okay, vibrations are happening. And why are vibrations happening? Okay, strings are vibrating. So when we pull the strings vibrate. That's how sound is produced. But what about other instruments like bell? You have gone through this. You know that whenever this small metallic ball strikes part, moves along the position, along its main position, it vibrates, sound is produced. But what about the other instruments like tabla or dolak? What about these instruments? Where is the vibrations happening in these instruments? So let's have a look on the vibrating parts of each of these instruments. Very important, very interesting thing comes that every instrument has a part which is capable of vibrations, and which vibrates and in turn vibrates the entire instruments, and sound is produced. As I said, vibrations produce sound. Now these vibrations in some cases are visible, like in mm, violin, in veena, vibrations are visible. But in other cases, vibrations are not visible. Okay, if we talk about a simple example here, bell. In bell, you can easily see the metallic ball is vibrating along its mean position. Okay, if you look at ek tara, ek means one, and tara means string. Actually, it's having only one string. That's why it's called ek tara. Even guitar, veena, you see the strings actually vibrating. So here stretched strings are the vibrating part of these instruments, right? So the strings are stretched, so they are like fixed at both ends. You look at the string of guitar, it's fixed at both ends, and when we move it, it's like a stretched string. It's already tight at both ends, and when you are moving it from between, so what's happening? It's vibrating. So let us suppose you take a rubber band, you just fixed it at both the ends, and now if you try to pull it or push it, it will vibrate. So that's how these stretched strings also move. So in these type of instruments, vibration is easily visible. But there are certain instruments where the vibrations are not visible. Let's look at tabla and dolak. Here we don't have any stretched string. So what is vibrating in it? In these cases, it's this membrane which is vibrating. So how do you play a tabla? The person who is playing tabla, he beats on this membrane. They vibrate. So in these cases, stretched membrane is the vibrating part, right? That produces sound by vibrating when you beat it. Okay. So we have another instrument like we discussed about it in previous lecture, that is flute. In the flute, you neither have stretched strings nor have membrane. So what do you have there? All you can see in a flute are the holes, right, which are present on its surface. And how do you play a flute? You just blow air through these holes. So with the help of your fingers, you keep closing and opening the holes. Whenever you don't want a hole to remain open, you just put your finger there, then you blow the air through the open holes, and that is how a flute is played. So what exactly vibrates in this case? A flute is nothing but a hollow tube. inside. It's just a cylindrical tube with hollow inside, and all you have is there holes. Now, when I say there's nothing inside, that means what is there? There's nothing but air. And when you blow through those holes, you are actually making air to flow through these holes, right? So, air flows through the holes of fluid, and the stream of air creates the vibration of air at holes. So, it's basically the air that vibrates inside the hollow tube, and this vibration of air produces the sound which we hear. So here you saw different instruments have different parts which are capable of vibrations. Everywhere there is some vibration that produces sound. Not only these instruments, there are a couple of other instruments where you don't have a lot of complexity. You just need to strike the instrument. For example, in the guntum, look here, this is like a earthen pot, pitcher you can also say. When you just need to beat it, once you strike on these type of instruments, the membrane starts vibrating, and vibration is not so prominent that you can see it from the distance. But if you want to feel the vibrations immediately, put your finger gently there, you will be able to feel that membrane is vibrating. Okay, now let's try to relate this concept of vibrations producing sound with some of the examples which we see around us. So, such examples are the clock. Generally, the wall clock which we have in our houses. Have you ever noticed the sound produced by the pendulum of the clock? You will always have the ticking sound of clock. And where does it come from? It comes from vibrations which is happening inside. Okay. So, next example, you can take the band party. Whenever you see there is a function happening, or you go to some orchestra or some sort of celebration, you see the people, they blow horns. How do they blow horn? They just push in air, and the vibration of air produces a sound. A very similar concept like that of a flute. As you know, in flute we are also blowing in air, and vibration in air inside the hollow tube produces the sounds. Very similarly, here also the person is blowing air inside the body of instrument, and inside the horn the air is vibrating, and that produces sound. Not only these musical instruments, even the horns in your vehicles, like they also operate in a very similar way. It's just in this case you blow in air through your mouth, and in this case you have a structure like this. Look, you have a rubber like structure, rubber bulb present at the bottom. So you press this rubber bulb, it's equivalent to pushing in air inside. As this rubber bulb is squeezed, air is forced in. So air is forced in this place, and this causes vibration of air. And when air column vibrates, it produces sound. That's how the horns vibrate. Now with this, I hope you're convinced that yes, vibrations produce sound. So in many cases where even though we cannot see the vibrations taking place, but yes, somewhere or the other, whether it's clearly visible or it's hidden, but vibration is taking place. Even we produce a lot of sounds. We are talking, singing, sound, shouting. So in all these cases, we are also producing a lot of sounds. So this is all in this lecture. Thank you, students.